So now you're.
So now I should be able to go to my PowerPoint
Yes. Now I'm gonna run
and
away.
slideshow, presenter view.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yay.
there we are. We're happy.
You just.
Awesome. Then at the end, we just have to do these steps down here.
Okay,
Okay, so I'll go check on Hangouts, make sure it's on.
okay.
Oh, it already has our meeting notes, like super awesome from last time.
It looks like it saved
It
it.
like just saved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I want to hide this
And we're
thing.
broadcasting, so we don't have to worry about.
What just happened?
I've been.
I just walked into the room.
Oh, no. This is like, don't even just,
We have our two, Greg and Benji are.
yeah. All right, so.
You guys are our only followers. So we appreciate you both.
The problem. I'll talk about the problem with this presentation.
I don't know.
I have about 8 hours worth of stuff I think I can talk
I
about.
think you need to share.
But
your screen.
I only needed that, and then I had no idea what we're doing, so we're only gonna talk about, so I only have really disjointed things in here. We'll see how it goes, so. We're happy.
So in Google, right?
Yeah, just little tiny things.
What am I looking at?
Yeah.
So you in Hangouts?
I
It
don't-
looks like it's recording.
Can you
so
do
I'm
that,
seeing
Greg?
you.
Or-
Yeah, no,
I'm
I,
not seeing your screen.
If you could do that, I think you should get up
I'm
and
not really
demonstrate. It would
certain
be
what
more
I need to be doing to make it better.
So we need to get back to Google, the Hangout page. Let's see.
Is Google hanging on air?
You're on events, right?
Lynette,
Yes.
how do we pull
need to-
Google Hangout
Did you
again?
share your screen? Or
It's
was
not
this-
sharing the
we're seeing-
screen for
we're
some
seeing
reason.
you.
Oh, okay. So Hangout is, right, well, here's Google.
Yeah, I noticed.
Okay, well, that's not the
certain.
Hangout, though.
No, it's not the Hangout.
You told me to memorize it.
There it is.
Yep, it was on the.
Oh, it's green button.
Yeah. And
Try it again. Click on it.
this is the one we're sharing, right?
Mhm.
Yep, okay, share. So, you know what, I hit this to hide this, and maybe it closed it, maybe I hit stop sharing. Because this little white thing
It's still not
annoys me.
sharing our screen though.
She hasn't started
Maybe-
broadcast yet, has she?
She has, yes. Present to everyone, maybe?
Okay, so now I'm seeing it.
No, I am.
Oh,
screen-
okay. So pull up our PowerPoint now.
Yeah, we're here. Okay, so hang on, PowerPoint. Then I'm just gonna minimize this now. Minimize that. It's just gonna be minimized, so it's down there, Ally, if we need it.
All right.
And here we go. And now we go to, I should remember what the key command is for presenter view, but I never remember that. There we go. So we're there. Now give it a second, because it just went up there. At some point, it should update. That screen no longer looks like that.
Maybe refresh the page.
Yeah,
Okay.
So,
okay.
Thank you.
All right.
You can
Wait, which is yours, which is mine? Does it matter? Okay.
I enjoyed that here.
Yeah. Oh, it's, okay, so we could start.
Mhm.
Oh, we have another person.
Okay, that was.
So Ally and I were just talking about how at this time slot, if we weren't presenting, we'd probably actually go to a different presentation than ours. And I'm actually surprised that people are here. So thank you very much for coming. I thought the CMS panel might be interesting. You know?
We're not saying that you should go, but.
Yeah, we're not saying that. I'm just saying thank you.
Oh man. All right, so thank you all for coming. We are these are our email addresses, and we have a little bit of a document that we put together if anybody wants to follow along.
And
More
it's
welcome.
not the slides, it's like the important stuff from the slides.
Yeah, it's
It's
the
actually got a little bit more than what's on the slides there. So I'm going to give some commands later, which nobody wants to write down, some snippets for a couple of things, and they're on that document.
we'll show it
which
again
is a
later
Google Doc.
if you want the guts. So yeah, we are before it hits the fan. So basically yeah, does this work? Okay. Did I pass the slide? Oh, okay.
Yes.
It's
support
weird
goddesses.
because the screen isn't doing what that's doing. So, but I'll get you started. So my name is Allie, and this is Lynette, and we like to think of ourselves as support goddesses. We work for Acquia, and you're going to say some more about being a support goddess, if I recall.
I was just going to say that we've been around Drupal for a long time. We've seen lots of problems. That's kind of what we're here to talk about, is that we've seen lots of problems and people aren't really
Is
ready
everything all right?
for it. They don't think their website's going to go down, and it will. At some point, you will have a problem.
You can do it. Talk over
Sorry, I
here.
just wanted to check and see if you've got your Google up.
Yep.
All good?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Okay. So what are we going to talk about? Well, when I give a brief intro about, at some point in website land, you are going to have a problem. So you want to make sure that you are prepared for that day. The more you know, the more, the better you're going to be able to handle when something happens. So we're going to go over some material, some sort of very basic stuff of like what you should have, before something happens. And then we're going to have some tips and tricks that we've learned. And, when that problem occurs, basically. So it's also, this is a really big topic. So we're only going to be able to touch on a few things. And I mean, we could probably do a whole week of material, but we're going to do as much as we can in 40 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just yesterday. Yeah.
So this is just basically the basics. If you don't have these things covered, then there's just no excuse. But it's really surprising and it's sort of silly, but it's really important to just have some general information, just really handy when there is a problem that happens. Like, who are you gonna call? Like, do you have those names? Do you have those phone numbers? Do you have those email addresses handy? Do you know your developers, your consultants, your coworkers? Do you have a support system where you can just, do you know how to create a ticket with these people? Can you log into this account? Do you know that account name? Just as important, I'm going to talk too fast. I gotta slow down. Just as important, like, do you know the IP addresses of your servers? Or do you have that information? Do you have the passwords? Do you have SSH keys? Do you know how to connect to your database? Like, all these things are just really important. Additionally, do you know where your backups are located?
You've actually done backups.
Have you actually backed up anything?
That's only half.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many people don't know. They're just like, oh, it's just not
Yeah,
being backed
exactly.
up.
Exactly.
I backed up every week, but I never test them.
Right, right. And you should actually do that. That's a whole other thing about how you should handle your backups and a retention schedule and blah, blah, blah. That could be a whole section in itself. But you should at least know where your backups are. So, and that they're being done.
Are you using version control? These things questions you want to ask, like, sort of like go through a checklist. Like, if there is an emergency tomorrow, do I know how to access my server? All right, let's go. So what we like to think of it is sort of know your stack, know how your signal flow goes, like, right? So we have two situations here. We have on the right, just a simple box, just a simple server with Apache, PHP, MySQL. If something goes wrong on your site, there isn't many places where this could occur. It's going to be, it's going to be in one of these instances. But on the left, you have a more complex system with the CDN, load balancers, web servers. The problem could occur anywhere. It could occur externally. It could occur internally. Having a basic understanding, even if you're not a very technical person, it helps to understand when other people tell you what's going on, where to look. So, yeah. Other things that are really important, where are your logs, right? Do you know how to access your logs? Almost everything on the web servers will have a log associated to it. So, you got your Apache logs, your PHP logs, your Drupal Watchdog logs. Yeah, it's endless.
If you're using a CDN, there's a log at your whoever your, like Akamai has logs that you can look through. Everybody has logs. And when you're troubleshooting, you need to be looking at your logs.
Right.
So you got to know where they are.
So if you're running Drupal, for instance, it's strongly recommended that you get your watchdog logs out of your database and into something like syslog or another logging service. Another thing is something like Loggly, which is a third-party service, which lets you consolidate all your logs and set up searches and alerting systems for if something is to happen. So when they talk about Drush, if you don't have Drush set up, then you're just doing it wrong. I mean, and don't be afraid of the command line. Drush and command line are your friend.
Now that's actually, of course, we're talking about Drupal. So if you're running WordPress, you don't need Drush, but it will help with Drupal sites. I
like to call nice to haves or like New Relic or Traceview, which are like application performance management systems, which can really help you deep dive into where a problem might be on your application, if it's a specific query or a specific view. Like, these are really great tools to have. So you're up.
I'm up.
Yeah, I went too fast. So now,
ta-da! Problems happen, and as soon as I come into the room, problems happen. So this is me. I'm the alert. But something has happened on your website. And the big deal here, and this is another slide that's like really basic, but honest to God, most of troubleshooting is stopping and looking and thinking about what your actual problem is, okay? So it's not, oh, the internet is dead, or my website is dead. Well, is it dead? Or, is it just this page that's not responding? Is it every page that's not responding? What is the exact behavior that you see? What should you be seeing? When did it start? Did you guys just update a module yesterday and now it's happening? I'd start looking there. So you try to take a look at what's going on. So what has changed? Who does it affect? Many times it's only anonymous users, or it's the administrator, or it's anybody but an administrator. It's logged in users. So you need to figure out who it's affecting. Can you make the problem happen all the time? If you're really down, then of course it's happening all the time. But sometimes it's just, when I sometimes try to update this item, I get a 503. I get a temporarily unavailable when I try to save, or something like that. So can you make the problem happen? If you can't make the problem happen reliably, it gets really hard to troubleshoot. So part of the deal is, how can I make this happen again? What did I do? Okay, so can you find where your signal breaks? So if we take a look at this slide, and I know these aren't like the greatest pieces of graphics that we created here, but I've overlaid the IP addresses right here over different places. So we've got a problem, and our website is not responding. So right now, when you type in www.mysite.com, it's going to your CDN, if you have this complex system right here. That resolves to your CDN, and you go there, and then it pushes all the way through. Well, if you have a problem, is it actually at the CDN, or is it farther along? So the thing that you want to do is try to figure out where it's happening. So let's say I want to directly connect to my load balancer and see how it responds. What you do is you use something called Etsy hosts. Do people know about Etsy hosts? All right, so basically you just go to your Etsy host file and you put in the IP address of your balancer there, and then you type in www.mysite.com and you go right there. Do I see the behavior here? Okay, I see it here. Let's see if it's one layer back. Let's go to each of these web servers. Is it only happening occasionally? Maybe it's just this web server, right? So Etsy hosts lets you sort of bypass DNS. This is actually extremely valuable. The other thing that I didn't put in here that I want to say is sort of basic, which I wish I had, is I like to have two tiny text files. One that loads PHP info, and one that's just a basic HTML page that I put in the root directory. And if I can hit those pages, if I can hit the HTML page, I know Apache is fine. If I can hit the PHP page, I know that generally PHP is fine. And then it's either Drupal is throwing up, or something is wrong with the database at that point. So those are just two tiny little text files that you can have that you can actually go ahead and put in your root directory ahead of time if you want. So those are just sort of basics so you can figure out where your problem is. All right, so the next slide. Oh, sorry, this is an example of the Etsy host. All right, the other thing is using curl to see headers. Until we actually looked it up for doing this presentation, I didn't know that curl actually was from the acronym C, S-E-E, URL. To see a URL, I thought it was typical internet geeky stuff. Okay. No, it's C. It's at least according to Wikipedia. You know, and now he's got to look it up, right? All right, so anyways. So curl, of course, allows you to look and see what's coming back from your web server from the command line. You don't have to get the browser involved. So I particularly like to use this particular SlicksGit, which is to show me the errors, follow the redirects, give me only the headers, and then I'm doing a git. 99% of the time you're going to do a git instead of a put. So that's what you want here, and then whatever your address is. And what's nice about this, if you haven't seen this, and it looks like this audience is probably already knows all this, but you get a fair amount of responses. So for example, I just curled Angie's list, just to have something here to show you. If you look up here on the top, you see the very first thing, angieslist.com, I've got a redirect. Move permanently, it takes me to www.angieslist.com. Now what's interesting is that particular front site is actually a Microsoft IIS server that redirects to another server down here, and which talks to Nginx. It's a 200. It's an actual cache miss, but it is a varnish hit. We've got the two varnish things here. We've got a request ID, which could be in most of your logs, depending on how you set up logging, whether you have the request ID. That's a really nice piece of information that you can use to track through. So these sorts of things give you a lot of information. There's also a nifty trick that I have in the handout that I didn't put in the slides, but it looks like everybody here is fairly sharp, so I thought I'll talk about it really quick. Is a lot of times you need to curl something and you need to be authenticated, right? And it's really hard to do an authenticated curl because authenticated, you basically got to pass it the cookie. And so it's this really long thing that nobody ever wants to create by hand. You don't want to have to type it. So I don't know, I probably won't try and do a live demo, but if you get our document in there, basically you can use Chrome Developer Tools. You go into Chrome Developer Tools, you have to switch to the network tab, you need to be logged in, reload your page, and you come down here to the network tab down here on the bottom, you find your original request, you right click on it, and there's a copy as curl. And you take that and then you can paste that and then you get the full set of the headers back. In the browser, you can kind of piece through Chrome Developer Tools and see it, but a lot of times this is much easier to take a look at. All right. All right, Drush rules. Now, some of these are extremely basic. Everybody almost always knows Drush CC to clear your cache. Some people don't know the ULI command. A lot of times when if you don't have your stuff prepared ahead of time and you don't remember your password, you can use a Drush ULI to get yourself along. This particular command defaults to using the admin user. You can give it a /UID and give it a particular user number instead of using the admin user. Sometimes these things are turned off and you can actually change a password from the command line too. So if you know the username, you can use Drush, it stands for user password, some user -- password equals whatever you want. And that will get you in too, as long as you have SSH access into your server and Drush setup. Enabling, disabling modules. That works sometimes, but sometimes your site is so borked that those things don't work. So you're getting too many errors in Drush that you can't even do it here. And a lot of times in Drupal sites, if you're gonna fail, it's gonna be, you've enabled a new module and it's just thrown up. Yeah. Oh, while we're here, really quick, I kind of started talking on the term, but here. So the other thing is you can do themes at the same time. If you remember though, enabling themes, they're not, just enabling doesn't make them the default theme. To do the default theme, you have to use the vset command, where you tell it it's the theme default and then your theme name. So that's the other little piece that people forget. If you need to see what your Drupal variables are, you can always do a drush vget, no arguments. It'll show you, it'll dump the variable table and you can see the whole thing there. which is really helpful. And you can actually set things to using drush vset like we did here, whatever the name of the variable is, and then the thing. So that's also helpful. All right, now you enable a module, life goes, life goes sideways, right? And you get this entity controller something or another. It's almost always you need a registry rebuild. 95% of the time you see that you need to rebuild your registry. Now there is a module out there which you may or may not have thought to install ahead of time called registry rebuild. That's what this link is. And you can use the drush RR command for that. But you don't have to do it that way. And I actually find that sometimes your site is so forked that this won't run. This almost always runs. You can do a drush PHP eval or drush EV, and then registry rebuild, and that will almost always run for you. That's this I use daily. It's my life. And my site doesn't work. Okay, let's look. You know.
Do you have a slightly skewed point of view on how reliable Drupal is?
You know, yeah, it does seem. I tried to explain that to some of the people who've only ever done support work. So a lot of people, for example, if you're a real Drupalist, you realize that views just rocks, and it is the thing. But you can write a lot of really bad views. I mean, there is a way to do horrible things in views. And what we see in support is people doing horrible things in views. So if you don't have a lot of experience, you're like, oh, views, it's horrible. Blah, blah. No, it's not. It's wonderful. You just don't do what they do. All right, so here's another really handy thing that I use a lot. This is, you want to simulate a page load from Drush, so you can see all the errors. All right, so you could go piece through the logs and try to find it, but doing it this way, you can see where it happens in the Drupal load. So there's a drush, and the -dv gives us debug verbose, ev evaluate, and then you just evaluate menu execute active handler. This runs. Now this particular site didn't show any errors. This was your test site, but. And then here at the end, it starts loading the thing. I just cut that off. It would actually still show you all the HTML afterwards. This is another really handy thing if you need to troubleshoot Drupal and figure out exactly where the error is happening. All right, database problems. Or problems that you want to disable a module and Drush isn't allowing you to do it. You can go to the database and do it. So another super handy thing that Drush can do is Drush SQL will connect you to your database. Now, I've given the short versions of these commands, and if you're using a big multi-site, you actually have to have, it's got to be longer, or you've got to be doing it from the right, telling it what URL and stuff like that. But if you're using a multi-site, you're generally familiar. If not, if you need help with that, I can tell you how to do that. So Drush SQL, boom, connects me right into a MySQL interpreter, and I can run commands directly on my database. If you don't have Drush installed and you want to connect to MySQL, you can do MySQL -- the user, your username, password, the password. You can pass it a host and a database name. 99% of the time, you aren't going to need that. Most of the time. So if you need to disable a module, it's update the system. There's a table called system that holds modules, themes, everything on and off. If it's on, it's 1. If it's off, it's 0. Update system, set status to 0, where name equals the module name. And that will disable the module when you can't do anything else. Then you probably have to clear cache, rebuild your registry, do all those things after that, but that will get the module turned off. I've had times where just turning off a module has been just hell.
So is it such that you can actually run Drush SQL, but you can't run disable the module? Like it's always.
Drush SQL runs earlier, and it just looks at it looks at your settings.php. So generally, if it knows where your settings file is, you can get into your database.
Yeah, it doesn't go into Bootstrap.
Yeah.
knowing that in my basics folder, I definitely don't know that.
Well, now the other part of that is though you could go look at your settings.php file and find it in there. I mean, so if you do have, so that's the other thing. If you don't have and you don't have this installed, you can find your settings.php file and it will be listed in there. Which is under default sites. More than likely sites default settings.php, unless you have a multi-site, then it could be in each of those. But all right, so the next one. This is one that nobody will ever remember. You won't remember this, just copy and save this. Once you're in the database, a lot of the Drupal problems are because some table has gotten huge. This takes all your tables and sorts them by size and tells you what size they are. This is super handy. The tables that I see this happening to, Drupal Watchdog. There's another reason why you want to, it's one of the reasons why you want to get the Watchdog table out of your database and into syslog or something like that. If your site is having problems already, you don't need it writing to your database every time you have an error. And if you start getting lots of errors, your Watchdog logs start getting huge. And every time it has to insert into there, it's another write into this huge table, and it just becomes this mess. Plus, it's really, really hard to kind of search through that. So you can look at recent ones in the, inside of Drupal itself, but it's actually sort of saved in this JSON format inside of a field. So like doing select queries on it and stuff can be done in a pinch, but it's not really the way that you want to look. So it's really quite good to look at syslog. And I believe in our documentation, there should be a link to a blog post about how to get syslog set up for Drupal if you want to use that. Or you might be on a hosting. Acquia does it, Pantheon does it. A lot of hosting companies automatically will have syslog set up for you, so you don't have to deal with that. Or you can use a third party like she talked about, Loggly, which allows you to put all sorts of logs together, lets you do searches across multiple logs. It's got a lot of nice little features that makes it useful. So anyways, once you do this, the other table that you want to take a look at is CacheForm. So CacheForm holds your temporary sort of, any form that you fill out in Drupal, it gets written to the CacheForm table temporarily. And once that form is saved and done, it's not really needed anymore, but it's not deleted until cron is run. A lot of times I'll go to find a site, cron is not running regularly. And it could be not running regularly because of a problem that they're having, or it could be not running regularly because they didn't set it up. Either way, that table, without cron running, that table doesn't get truncated, doesn't get cleaned up. So you can end up with this huge table. You will also see sometimes, we had a customer that had a vote thing up on their site, a form for voting. They were voting on models. Somebody was hitting that like 15 to 20 times a minute, doing these votes, this automated votes, and their CacheForm table was filling up. So it wasn't really a denial of service. Somebody was trying to win this particular thing, but what it did is it filled up their CacheForm table. So if you see a large CacheForm table here, you can just truncate it. People who are in the middle of filling out forms will lose their forms. But generally, that's people that are filling out forms right at this moment. After that's done, it's really not needed anymore. So if you're in a really bad situation, that's one way to handle that. Okay. That's kind of out of place, show tables, but that I always forget the name of whatever table I'm looking for. So show tables will always give you that. And that's kind of stuff that if you know SQL, you'll remember that, but not everybody knows SQL off the top of their head, so some of these are handy. You can clear cache in the database as opposed to using a cache clear. It's a really sort of lots of tables that you have to clear, so I've only showed the first 3 here. In our thing, we've got the full command of what is the normal amount, and you can just cut and paste that in. You might want to do a show tables and take a look because certain modules may add a few more cache tables than what's there. So there'll be some cache underscore something. And then there's the CacheForm, which we just talked about. All right, memory problems. So you start getting memory errors and people think the thing to do is to raise memory. That's not always the best thing. If you have lots of money and you can load lots of memory into your server, that might be, that's a viable option. But in general, what happens is, and what people don't think about, is that memory is divided. Whatever memory you set for Drupal is per PHP process. So if you have 512 and you raise your memory per process to 512 megs, actually, if that's what you have and you do that, your site's not even going to boot because you set it too high. But you could end up with only one PHP process. And if that PHP process is a database write that takes a minute, nobody else is going to be able to do anything until that's done. So you have to be careful when you raise memory. You want to do it intelligently. So there is a module out there. You install it. You have it. It'll start writing to your Drupal watchdog log, which you have now going to syslog and not to your database table. And you're not going to keep it on forever. All right. This is a temporary thing because it does write a lot of stuff. But it will tell you memory at everything that it does. Boom, boom, boom. So you can start seeing where your memory usage is, and you might be able to improve things. If you decide that you absolutely need some memory for certain things, you can conditionally set memory. So you can say, when somebody is visiting this particular path, raise the memory to this. Where you usually want to do this is for admin type paths. The module page is famous for this. Panels pages. Things like that, panels, not the actual panel page, but the panels UI page is famous for taking up huge amounts of memory. So this links to a document that basically what to put in your settings.php that says, if I'm on this path, raise the memory temporarily while I'm there. The other thing that I want to recommend is sometimes you'll see these unable to allocate memory for pool errors.
I had those writing to my log files, and my server went down because the log files filled up the file system. So I know where those come from.
Yes, that's opcode. In spite of the fact that it says unable to allocate memory for pool, it has nothing to do with RAM. It has to do with your opcode cache. So opcode cache is what, it takes your code, writes it out to opcode cache. It takes it from, English into opcode that the machine can read. So APC or Zend opcode, and you'll have to adjust that to fix that.
You mean cache?
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you, sorry. Yeah, Zend opcache. Yeah, so that's that. Oh, okay, one last thing. And I was just telling Ali, I'd really, really like to do a session on logs, but that would be like hours long on how to go through logs. But this is a snippet that's handy. This snippet will work with the default Apache access log style. Apache lets you adjust it and put different things in your log, but this will work with just out of the box. You haven't added anything to your Apache. But what this does is it takes a look. There's a number up here, 2015:14. So 2015 is the date. 14 is the hour. So you're going to want to change that to whatever hour you are at. So whatever hour you want to see, this takes them all, looks at all the IP addresses in the access log. It tells you the top 20. So for example, this particular server had 1,094 visits from this one particular IP address, which is probably not a good thing. It's probably somebody trying to do something nasty. But if you're having performance problems and you don't know why, you want to check that. If you're doing this for a customer, always talk to them before you block IP addresses. Could be a corporate headquarters, something like that, where it's one IP that hits them all the time, and that's normal. But you want to check. You can do a who is, and that IP address, and it'll give you an idea who that is. It's not super accurate, but it's helpful. There is a little snippet in the docs about if you actually want to just block that IP address. You can Google it too, where you can put it in htaccess if you just want to block an address really quick. All right, that actually just took me out. Okay. So does anybody have any questions? How are we doing on time? 3 minutes. And we can talk about all kinds of things. One other thing I thought about too when he mentioned logs, I don't know why I thought about it. If you have bad cron jobs or if you have things that aren't running well on your server and it doesn't quite know where to put it, a lot of times you'll find them in var mail, your mail spool. So if you can't find an error, especially if you're tracking cron logs and you aren't cron jobs and you aren't redirecting that output somewhere, go look in your mail spool, var/mail. That might be full. We actually had a customer who had problems and stuff had been writing there for so long, it actually did fill their drive and bring the drive down because nobody thought to actually look in that thing.
Caching question. So if you're running Varnish cache plus Google cache,
Yes.
and you're updating a node, or the user's updating a node, and it's not immediately displaying on the site, what's the best way to?
Okay, so there's a couple of things with that. And it's different depending upon if you're hosting with Acquia or if you're hosting with somebody else. So first, you want to make sure that you have your cache settings set intelligently. And I'd almost want to bring up a Drupal site because I can never remember. So the one that says something about external cache, that has the word external in there, and I find the two cache settings worded really oddly. But there's a second one for external cache. That is the one that you want to set to 0. Okay, so that basically says, so you've got the first one that says how long, do I got this right? Yeah, so that's the one you want to set to 0, and the other one you want to say I want cache for an hour. Or 5 minutes, or however long you want your cache to last. Otherwise, they end up sort of building on top of each other. You want your, so first of all, you make sure that you have that correctly. And I will add into the document links to documents that talk about how to set cache settings correctly. You can reset a varnish. You can use varnish. So go in and clearing your entire page. I mean, your entire varnish cache every time you update a node? No, you don't want to do that. I mean, you have varnish cache there for a reason. More than likely, you're on a big site that gets lots of traffic. You can, no matter who you're with, there'll be a way to curl varnish to purge it with that URL. Okay, and so that can be done. And the command line for that will be different depending on how they set up varnish for you. If you want to take notes, I'll make sure to add that to our document, at least some documentation that talks about it, how to do it with Acquia. Now, we actually recommend, if you're with us, that you use a module called Acquia Purge that sets up purging, and you can actually use rules and things, and it says, you know, if I update a node, you need to purge the node, and you also need to purge this, maybe this block or this view at the same time. So you can set some rules about your purging, because you say, you know, when I update this node, that actually is also going to refer to this block over here, so this view is going to need to be purged. So there's some rules and things that you can do, and that can happen in cron or it can happen immediately. There's lots of things to setting that up. Otherwise, yes, you do that through a curl. And there will be a way, if you're not with us, there is a way to do that. There's also another varnish purge module on Drupal that I think works with, you know, non-Acquia hosts. I haven't tested it, so I can't say anything intelligent about it, but I know that it exists. Mm-hmm. Yes?
What about monitoring your server or mooning or something?
Oh, like just standard uptime monitoring, like, and I'm not familiar with Moonit.
There are others, I forget, but you know, something that'll keep track of when you're running low on disk space,
Yes.
when your CPU is spiking.
Yes, yes, you should do all of that. Now, if you have, yes to all of the above, right? So some of that can be handled. New Relic does some of that, not the disk space, not that kind of stuff, but like, you know, it'll track how long your database writes are and stuff like that, and it'll track it per what they call transactions, so you can see that it's coming from this view or things like that, which make it really, really useful. So New Relic is useful for that. Actual hardware monitoring. Yes, you should do it. Many hosts come with something for you. And I honestly don't know anything beyond that. I know that we do that, you know, where I work, but I'm sure everybody else does it too, right? Or most people do. So you do want to kind of, and if you get really smart, you can set up alerts. Yeah. So that's what Loggly does, by the way, too. Loggly doesn't monitor processes, but it does monitor your logs. And you can set Loggly up to, if this particular phrase shows up in your log, or this particular error level or something like that, it can then page you, things like that. Anybody else?
You mentioned sort of version control briefly in your slides. Have you, like, what's your sort of general solution for the problem of config files in version?
Wait for 8 to get done. Obviously, there's no answer. And it would be great if I could stand up here and say, well, use features. But the promise of features and the actuality of features I have found to be two different things. Where features sometimes will cause more problems than if you're going to use features to manage config, keep them tiny. That's my, don't try to make 2 or 3 features that cover everything, but keep them tiny so that it's easy to turn them on and off and manage them. I have just seen such weird things with feature reverts. So it's almost hard to, and to be fair, the way people use features is never the way it was intended to be used. People saw this could be used as maybe a way to handle version control in Drupal and tried to do it, and it was never really intended for that. So it's not really a slam on features so much as we just need configuration control. So it's awesome that it's in Backdrop. It's coming in 8. There is no good answer. And back up. If you're going to make some changes, back up that database and just do it right before you do it, so you've got it, so you can come back easily. Otherwise, there's no good answer, unfortunately. Yeah. There's some things. For example, if you're doing views, and you probably know this, but there's certain things that you can just export and then import them in. So I export views, and actuality, taking your views, exporting them, and then making a little module that just has them, not using features, but just making a module that has those in there, it actually speeds up your views. It actually gives you a slight performance boost. So it's useful.
I guess related, what's the best way to compare? Like something goes really wrong. What's the best way to compare the code that currently exists to the what's in your code?
So it's code we're talking about?
I'm thinking code.
So actually code, well then I would use like git diff. Something like that, or and a lot of times, especially if it's like a fairly complex sort of comparison, I won't just use git diff from the command line. So and everybody has their editors that they love, right? And mine is kind of old-fashioned. I'm a BBEdit user, so from a long time, been a Mac user forever, and actually the diff in there is really nice, and so I use that. There's another one if you really like GUI stuff. There's a really pretty one out there called Kaleidoscope that gives you beautiful diffs. But it's actually helpful when you start getting to the logs. It makes it so much easier to look. But yeah, just standard diffing. If it's code, that's easy. If you're trying to figure out what's the difference between 2 databases, I mean, yeah, there's ways, but it's painful. I mean, I don't know of an easy way. And I'm not a SQL god. A SQL god might be able to help you with that, but that's not me.
Okay. I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I told you we needed the water.
No,
I told you I'd drink it all the water.
not too fast. I gotta close the Hangout.
So here's your scripts, I'm sorry, I'm still-
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So
Okay.
you wanna bring up the-
Bring up the recording window. It should be down here. Where is it? I don't see the window. Oh, there it is at the end. Okay. And we are going to stop the broadcast.